You're in the Waterloo.
Welcome to Waterloop, the podcast helping water leaders to discover solutions and drive change. This is the host, Travis Loop. This is episode number 183, Inside Philly's Green Machine. Philadelphia is one of the country's leaders in the use of green infrastructure to manage stormwater and bring multiple benefits to communities. Since launching its Green City Clean Waters initiative in 2011, Philly has installed 2,800 green pools at more than 800 sites, which together capture a staggering 3 billion gallons of water. The city's approach and accomplishments are discussed in this episode with Stephanie Chiorean, environmental scientist specialist and planner at the Philadelphia Water Department. Stephanie leads visits to 3 standout locations for green infrastructure: American Street, Adaire School, and Waterloo Playground. Along the way, she provides insights on lessons learned and advice for other cities working to go green. We're here in the middle of Philadelphia. Very exciting to talk about green infrastructure here. You guys are one of the absolute leaders in this area. Could you talk about Philadelphia's just approach to green infrastructure?
Sure, yeah. Philadelphia's approach is really focused on the green first philosophy. So we are pairing green infrastructure, like stormwater management systems, with some gray infrastructure improvements. So we really arrived at that approach by thinking through, from a cost point of view and a co-benefits point of view, what would be the most suitable solution for Philadelphia. So we're thinking about how do we deliver co-benefits as well as, add amenities to our neighborhoods at the same time as addressing the stormwater problem. So we have different pipelines. We've established our stormwater regulations, our stormwater incentives program, and then we have a PWD-led program. So for our PWD-led program, we're really focused on city-owned property or public property like streets and parks and vacant land or facilities that are owned by the city. With incentives, we'll really focus on non-residential properties. And with our regulations, they're basically applied to all properties that are triggering our stormwater regulations, which are at a threshold of 15,000 square feet of earth disturbance. So in essence, we are really going about it in a number of ways to get to our target goals of almost 10,000 green acres.
I think Philly's been on this kind of journey formally for over a decade now. I'm really curious just about what sparked that, how you started that journey, and what's been accomplished so far.
Sure. Yeah, so Philadelphia proposed this green first approach in 2009 to our regulators. And really, as I mentioned before, it was the best approach for Philadelphia to think about distributed green infrastructure systems throughout the combined sewer area and pair them with some traditional improvements. And that was really on a cost basis and on a co-benefit basis. And we were able to get a lot of support from our communities around that approach. And we did a lot of outreach at the very beginning when we were trying to formulate this. And that was also a big part of how we were able to be successfully propose it to our regulators. And it got adopted through the signing of formal agreement, consent order and agreement in 2011. So since 2011 to now, it's been about 12 years. We're in our 12th year. We celebrated our 10-year anniversary in 2021. As of that time, we had installed about 2,800 green infrastructure tools. And that means about 3 billion gallons of stormwater runoff being reduced, combined sewer overflow runoff. So that's really significant. And if you may remember, I talked about 10,000 green acres being our target. At the time, our target milestone, we have a 5-year increment target milestone. So our 10-year milestone was about 2,150 greened acres. So we exceeded that greened acre number, and now we're 2 years ahead of that, and we're about 2,700 green acres in, and we have 1,700 green acres in the pipeline right now in design and construction. So all that to say, we are a huge program.
3 billion with a B. I just want
Yes.
to circle back to that. That's incredible, and that's so impressive. So,
Yes,
and
3 billion.
that's going to keep growing too.
Exactly.
Yeah. Can you tell me about this project? The name of the street and what has happened here?
Yes, this is American Street. This is a street in a former industrial corridor. It's a rather large street compared to most Philadelphia streets. The cartway width is, curb to curb width is 84 feet, and the right of way is 120 feet. So that's a lot of space to work with. This street had rails, freight rails running up and down it from its industrial past. A lot of the lots were vacant. There are still some industrial commercial businesses along the corridor. When we started looking into the improvement project, it was identified by the streets department for improvements. And there was money, about $10 million from the state that was earmarked for the project. The water department had previously done a planning study in this area and had identified several opportunities for GSI. So when we heard that the streets department was finally letting loose with their project, we thought it would be a great opportunity for us to partner. And so as a city, we put in an application for what we call a Tiger grant. It's a transportation improvement generating economic recovery grant. So it's transportation focused. And our ask was that we get to remove the freight rails from the middle of the street. We found a unique opportunity to be able to put GSI in the middle of the roadway. One of the economic barriers was the track removal. So we used the $5 million from the Tiger grant towards that track removal. The project spans from Girard Avenue all the way up to Indiana Avenue, which is about 2 miles and 18 blocks. We have 41 GSI systems that we constructed. It was the largest public retrofit project to date that we've been involved with. I think we were able to really leverage a lot of the opportunities because of our partnership with the streets department. So there's a lot of coordination and collaboration with them.
You're in the Waterloo.
We're standing here in the middle of a bioswale in the median of the road. What is this, and how's this part of the big project?
So this is one of our bioswale blocks. When we were originally looking at how wide the corridor was, and the traffic volumes, there wasn't a need to have 84 feet wide lanes and parking. So we talked road diet, like what do we want, this cross section to look like? We want to have cars, we want to have pedestrians, we want to have bikes, and we want to have green wherever we can. This was just all asphalt, all concrete, not a lot of trees, just a vestige of the industrial past. So wherever we could accommodate it, we advocated to have the center median where the railroad tracks were turned into swales. And so I like to call this the Rails to Swales project, TM. But no, it was unused space, a lot of impervious area that could be managed. And so the inlets from the outside of the street actually come in, they daylight into outfalls that fill up. We have under drains and overflow structures for the larger storm events. And it adds a really nice feature to the corridor, I think. And so we worked very closely with our green operations group to come up with a planting plan that wouldn't require excessive maintenance. And so we came up with 2 different grass seed mixes. So there's a bottom of basin grass seed mix, and there's a side of basin grass seed mix that could be mowed just a few times a year relatively easily. Typically our smaller surface features like rain gardens and bump outs, we plant more ornamentally that will require more extensive maintenance. But we're just really focusing on getting trees and grasses into these systems, just immediate green, but pretty low maintenance, low cost.
This bike lane along the bioswale and kind of along this corridor, could you talk about how that was built into the project?
Yeah, well, when we were going through the design process, we wanted to consider all the users of the corridor. And, there's I like to say, pretty good core of bicycle commuters in the city. And this area was just not bike friendly. All the freight rail tracks and all the sidings made it very dangerous to bike down. And it was definitely from the start of the program going to be one of the major components. And when we were, going through the bioswale ideas, like having the center median be grass and manage stormwater, we thought it would be a great idea to put the bike lanes next to that bioswale. And to enhance the safety of the bikers, we included a mountable curb. So the bikes are actually riding a few inches above the vehicles. So they're more visible.
So we are at the Adaire School, and we worked with many, many partners to make this project happen. Together, they came up with a vision for the schoolyard that really featured green infrastructure and play. So, the result that you see here today is really, being able to transform a significant portion of the schoolyard, probably about a third of it, into a rain garden. And we also are standing on top of a subsurface stone bed underneath this porous play surface. And the parking area was relocated completely and striped out anew with kind of an area lined by trees. So you kind of a buffer between that space and the rest of the active play. And there's play equipment in another part of the schoolyard, as well as some play mounds right in front of the rain garden here that is really intended for a lot more active.
Can you talk about why Philly has such an emphasis on this intersection of schools and green infrastructure, why that's an area of emphasis and why that's so beneficial?
Sure. Yeah, so schools, of course, represent many things to Philadelphians and to folks in general. I mean, they are community hubs. Students are coming here to learn, but really there are places for families to also connect and the neighbors to gather. So we thought that having schools as part of our program was really important from that point of view. And of course, they're very large properties as well with a lot of paved areas. So the school district is one of the largest landowners in the city as well. So we cultivated a partnership over the last 11, 12 years to really work closely with the school district and over many different changes, both on our end and their end, to make sure that we have a dedicated partnership and connection. We also supported the school district in trying to find additional funding. And I'm sure we'll talk about this a little bit more later, but the maintenance aspect is really important. So we actually have Emma Melvin from the school district here that could speak about that. That was a really key component to continuing our partnership, and also for the school district to be able to realize some value in terms of financial gains. So there's actually a stormwater credit that the school district can get when they're retrofitting their properties in this way, as well as when they're meeting our stormwater regulations. So there's a stormwater fee that we charge. And so if they're able to manage stormwater on the site, they get a certain amount of credit back on their bill. So that's been a huge part of the process.
Can you talk to me about what it means to have this much green infrastructure here at this school?
Sure. Like just today, at the recess that happened about an hour and a half ago, there's a group of kids who are really rough, right? And the lunch aides don't have high expectations of them, let's say, and they know their names. And we were having water ice out here celebrating our field day, and one of the kids asked me to borrow one of the trash pickers, right? Because one of his like the lids, flew in there. And then he started picking up trash and like, oh yeah. The lunch aide came over and said, you got to take that away from that kid. That kid's no good. I'm like, just give him a sec. Give him a sec. That kid picked up trash for about 20 minutes on his own, quietly. The lunch aide couldn't believe it. Said, that's going to turn into a weapon any moment now. Didn't. The kid just quietly picked up trash. Like, maybe you just need something to do. That happened an hour and a half ago. In fact, right here, literally, the group of friends are sitting right here. So like, that's a little bit a snapshot of like the stewardship that this can foster. The other day, I was showing, actually yesterday, we were digging up seedlings of redbud trees that sprouted, volunteered, that from that redbud tree probably, or bird seed, but like we're gonna transplant them and put them in these raised bed planters that we have around the store, and until they're big enough, and then we can bring them back. There was a 2-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 6-year-old who were pulling the wagon and who were doing the digging, and they were so thrilled to show their mom what they had done, right? So I see all these little transformative moments. You cumulatively, you add them up, and what it adds up to is this feeling of ownership and pride that an acre of asphalt that was a parking lot doesn't make possible. It's not something that can happen. Before Trust Public Land, the Water Department, city, and the school district invested in this transformative project, this was a wasteland that briefly became a mob scene at dismissal, and then just as quickly emptied out as a ghost land. Now, after dismissal, there are so many families that hang out, that are here, that are playing. There's a little area in the bushes back over there in the American Cranberry that several different age groups and different recesses have claimed as their own. I've heard it called the Wizard Room. I've heard it called the Fairy Castle. I've heard it called all these things. It's just this little spot that is this really special little room within, like a green room within the schoolyard. There's so much cycles of positivity that happen and that are all enabled by this green intervention here.
You're with the school district, right? And the school district has a green infrastructure coordinator. Yeah, tell me about that.
So I was hired in 2019. Currently, at the end of this year, we'll have 52 green infrastructure sites, stormwater management sites on campuses and on school properties. As Stephanie mentioned, we are required, like all other property owners, to maintain our green infrastructure. And no one at the school district had the training and the experience to know how to do that specialized training and to oversee a contract that does the work, say vegetation maintenance or subsurface clean out. There was no one at the district who really understood the systems and knew how to oversee a contract and what the systems needed. And so they brought me in 2019, and I've been working really closely with PWD on both maintaining our current systems, but really kind of to bring forward stormwater management, to raise awareness within the school community about what they have on their campus, what the importance is, and how to expand the stormwater management systems on our school campuses. So they will be an asset to the school. As you can see, Adaire is a good example of the benefits, the multifaceted benefits that greening provides. We talk about stormwater so much, but just the added green, the change of space, the calming environment. Kids are very tactile. In these spaces, they come in and they touch and they bend and they immerse themselves in these spaces. It's a learning process for both the administration, the teachers, and the students on how to engage in these spaces. And it's ever evolving. We continue to change our designs a little bit by what we see in our maintenance aspects. So part of my role is to say, okay, this component didn't work well. This plant doesn't work well. We need to think about how we design access for different purposes, like how to maintain the spaces or provide access to the students. So we make all these changes while we do maintenance. We incorporate all those things into our designs of our new spaces. My role is to maintain, but also to raise the knowledge level in our whole school system on how these systems function and the benefits they provide.
Green infrastructure has a really big physical presence in neighborhoods, on streets and city blocks. How do you engage the community in the development of green infrastructure projects?
What we've done is even before we really started doing projects at scale, we had some early demonstration projects. And so through that process, we learned, what was important, not just in designing systems, but how to engage with communities. And also, when we first were kind of pitching this idea of green infrastructure-based program for addressing combined sewer overflows, we went to the community and talked to them about, what this all meant. So we started from a very community-focused perspective. And so we had to continue with that through the actual development of our projects. So we do this now at scale, and it takes a lot of us. So we basically divided the combined sewer area into 4 districts. And so we have public engagement specialists paired with what we call district planners who identify projects within those areas. We've developed our outreach strategy to be geographically organized, but then we go deeper in developing those relationships with those communities. And the range of outreach and engagement work that we do can be anywhere from one-on-one meetings, sometimes or letters or emails, to full-on community meetings that we host, or we go to other community meetings that community organizations are hosting. We've also done some pretty creative ways of engaging folks through art and different types of partnership with the Mirror Arts program, different types of events to kind of bring folks together to talk about potential projects in their neighborhood at large. So we've tried many different avenues, and by doing that, we're learning along the way. And what we keep learning is that community engagement is really key to making our projects a success from the beginning all the way through construction and beyond that into maintenance. We want folks to be engaged with us and report issues. We even have a program called Soak It Up adoption program. We work with community organizations. We actually pay them a stipend to help us basically steward our public green infrastructure systems.
One of the tough challenges with green infrastructure is maintenance. You put this great stuff in, but it needs to be cared for. What's Philly's approach to maintenance? How do you get that done?
Yeah. So in terms of maintenance, I'm going to segment it into a couple of different categories. So our PWD-led projects, the water department is in charge of the maintenance for those projects. And we have a whole entire team that's dedicated within our operations unit. They're called the Green Stormwater Operations Team. So they're really responsible for the maintenance of all of these green infrastructure systems in the street, in parks, on some facility properties, on some vacant land. Maintenance is important for performance, but also buy-in from the community, right? So if they're seeing systems that are full of trash, or the plants are not looking great, maybe they won't want that in their neighborhood. So in terms of buy-in, we really have to make sure that the maintenance aspect is front and center when we're thinking about planning and design and constructions. So in terms of maintenance on projects that have gone through our stormwater regulations and incentives, we actually have a post-construction inspection team, and that goes out and inspects projects. And then we have a 4-year cycle of inspection. These sites are required to maintain their systems in order to get the stormwater credits. But there is definitely a learning curve for many property owners. And, with bigger property owners like the school district, we have worked with them to really focus and strengthen their maintenance team and how they're doing it. So we actually were able to support the school district in creating an RFP for their maintenance contract. So through partnership work, we've been able to support different property owners to get their maintenance up to actually meet our criteria and also really get the full credit.
Okay, tell us about we're at Waterloo Playground, not Waterloo Playground, but what is this place? How has this been, green infrastructure been put in here?
Yeah, it's kind of an interior playground to between kind of rows of homes that were built, what used to be a street, Waterloo, that actually went through this site. So essentially, this area became a playground, and there was a community design collaborative, which is so the Community Design Collaborative is a nonprofit organization here in Philadelphia that provides pro bono design assistance. They created this play space competition, and one of the sites was this site. So with that competition, they're really trying to think about a full site transformation to pair nature play, and the water department was able to integrate stormwater management within the criteria. With that whole process, a design was created for this site to really try to balance the use of the site with the play and the stormwater management aspect. So this site takes runoff from the site itself and also from the street. So there's actually a linear stormwater tree trench behind me that follows this curve, as well as some forest mounds that also are able to take on some of that stormwater from the majority of this site. And there's also a rain garden here to my left that takes on stormwater from the street as well. So we created this very linear but kind of winding stormwater feature to accommodate also the play that was really a prerequisite for this site. And there was already basketball courts here, and they were reconfigured to allow for this kind of linear configuration to happen. And there was an amazing partnership with the Mirror Arts program. They painted them. They're vibrant and colorful. And so this kind of linear aspect really drove the design, but also made it really challenging for the stormwater management. So this was a very innovative design. We really tried to get as much stormwater as possible in the design, but with that came a lot of problem solving with the design team.
Philly's had an incredible journey with green infrastructure so far over the past decade plus. What's next for you all?
Sure, there's a lot that's next for us. We are looking at a potential expansion of green infrastructure into the separate sewer. We don't know what that looks like yet, and we are currently working with our regulators to understand, the permitting for a separate sewer, what we will be doing. So that's a geographic potential expansion of our green infrastructure work, since we're really focused on the combined sewer from a water department-led project point of view. Our stormwater regulations and our incentives are citywide, so we already kind of have those in place, but we'd probably be looking at using similar models of how we've implemented projects in the combined sewer, but also in the separate sewer. And of course, as part of this, we have to really consider climate resilience and equity. So those are two huge topics that we're really trying to understand. How do they intersect with our green infrastructure program and everything that we do, from community engagement to partnership work, and how we plan and design these systems for climate resilience. And that includes thinking about green infrastructure and flooding. What does that really look like for us? How do we design those systems? Right now, our systems are not really designed to address flooding per se, although they can help with some climate resilience goals. As we expand, maybe it's about thinking about targeted green infrastructure implementation in areas of greatest vulnerability to environmental issues and other types of vulnerabilities. So in thinking about climate resilience, we already have started doing some of that work. We've targeted some green infrastructure packages in areas of high heat in the Hunting Park area of our city, and also in Cobbs Creek. So those are just some examples of how we're starting to change that thinking.
through all your experiences, through everything that's happened here in Philly, what are some of the key lessons you've learned and kind of the companion to that, key advice you'd have for other communities?
Sure. So I think there's many lessons to learn from us. We have such a large scale program that sometimes it feels a little hard to translate that. But I think the way we started was thinking about building out partnerships and community stakeholders to try to understand, what is green infrastructure? How could it support the many goals that we all have collectively, working with city agencies to try to align goals and see where stormwater management with green can really hit their goals as well. So there's kind of this partnership building across different sectors that would be really helpful. But first, you have to really start to understand, like, how can green infrastructure really help some of the water issues that you are having, right? So I think being able to learn and understand that can take a lot, depending on where you are in your journey in green infrastructure. So there's lots of professional organizations that can help with that. So the Water Now Alliance, the U.S. Water Alliance, they're really fantastic. And there's the Green Infrastructure Leadership Exchange. There's peers out there that have been doing this for years that you can directly ask questions of and learn from. So you're not starting from zero. And they've also built out a whole bunch of resources that are available to utilities and cities across the U.S. and Canada. So I think we're not where we were 15 years ago with green infrastructure. So, maybe you all can leapfrog over some of the things that we've learned.
Thanks for listening to the podcast. To find all episodes, sign up for email updates, and connect on social media, visit waterloop.org.
You're in the water loop.